Hi, and welcome to the RRTC webcast on self-employment for individuals with disabilities. I'm Terry Blankenship. Thank you for joining us today. There are a couple of items that I wanted to mention before I introduce our presenter for today. The first one is that the webcast and transcripts will be archived for you, and it'll be available tomorrow. And you can go to the same webpage that you're on right now and just click on the archive link at the top of the page. The second item that I wanted to mention is that the program is open captioned. All you need to do is click on the open caption link. It'll take you to another page. You'll see a text box with streaming text. And if you would like, you can leave your real player open so you can see both the webcast and the streaming text at the same time. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Cary Griffin. Cary is Senior Partner at Griffin Hammis Associates and Special Projects Director at the Rural Institute at the University of Montana, where he provides training and consulting to professionals in the rehab field and to businesses. He has been instrumental in designing self-employment protocols and training for individuals, agencies, and states. So let's go ahead and get started, and I would like to turn the program over to Cary.
Thanks, Terry. Good day. Hope you're all doing well out there. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to run through sort of the overview using a flow chart that you'll all have access to on the web that basically guides the development of a small business and takes you through the idea formation into looking at how should that business be structured, what are the critical components of it. So we've got 30 minutes today, so it's going to be very, very quick. Certainly not the definitive look at business planning or small business development for folks with disabilities, but again, to give you some ideas of both the simplicity involved in small business and also in some of the complexities in some of the places where you might see that you or the person that you're helping to support may need some help. We're also going to just briefly touch on some of the Social Security aspects, and one of the reasons why we decided to start this short introduction to self-employment around the idea of business plans is that having a business plan for those of us without a lot of ready cash, and that would certainly describe a lot of folks with significant disabilities, that having a business plan is your key to funding a lot of times, whether it be presenting an overview of your business idea to the Social Security Administration through a PASS plan, whether it be going to vocational rehabilitation to try to find support and financing, or whether it would be going to a banker or maybe a workforce investment program of some kind. All of those organizations are going to request to see some formal approach and some proof that you've thought through the business idea. Now, none of those agencies necessarily has to require you to have a business plan before they start supporting you. In fact, one of the great things that Voc Rehab or a PASS plan can do or workforce investment could do is to pay to help you develop this business plan. But again, thinking through the plan a little bit, thinking through the business development is going to be critical to presenting a good idea as, here's my career goal, this is why I think this business will work. And so we'll give you a real sort of nuts and bolts small business approach to it. And having said that, we come from the background of supported employment, so we're thinking just as employment happens, that small business happens with support, and that anybody can be a small business owner provided that there's a market for the product, that it meets that person's needs and dreams and all the other variables that would go into wage employment. But that also that there is some critical thinking that goes into this. For a lot of you, this is a new area of exploration. Right now, we both in our private business and at the University of Montana, we've helped support about 200 different kinds of businesses, some in Montana, some in Wyoming through a Department of Labor project, but also just around the country. We're just starting to work with Kentucky with both their DD system and their VR system. We've been out to Maryland to talk to those folks a little bit, and Maryland looks like it's taking a lead. Certainly North Carolina, California, Oregon, Washington, lots of folks are picking up on this idea that here's another opportunity for folks to go to work. I also want to say that this is a great opportunity for folks in rural areas where maybe there aren't quite as many job options, but there are a lot of things that local communities buy or that can be sold in-state, in the region, globally, however that market develops. So it's just another opportunity to help people get productive and to get some economic opportunities in their lives. So what I'd like to do is to walk through the process a little bit. Again, this is a very short introduction. It's not going to be comprehensive to any degree. It's to get you thinking about how logically you think about developing a business idea with somebody and then presenting it in such a way that it can garner support from those other partner agencies that you and I both work with. This will be followed up at some time in the future with a web course that has more in-depth materials and study questions and materials. And we'll also, if you get into the chat room after this, you can ask about particular materials, and we can also make sure that some of those are available to you. So, some of the facts first before we get into the depth of this is that most small businesses succeed in the United States. Certainly there's that old myth that 80% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. Unfortunately, the data and the way that they collected and reported that data has been misleading for a number of years. And so if you go to the Department of Commerce, the Department of Commerce last year released a study that showed that 79% of all small businesses actually succeed. What happens is that many people develop a small business and then harvest it. They sell it off. They start another business. They add a partner. They diversify and change their name and their organizational structure. But business, small business, is especially lucrative, and it's an especially nice way to sort of avoid the pitfalls sometimes of wage employment. Not to say that it's not a difficult thing to do. Small business always has its challenges. Our challenge as a field is to figure out, well, how do I support this person or these people in this particular business venture? We also know that 90%, roughly 90% of businesses owned by people with disabilities succeed. So again, even though small business has this atmosphere around it of high risk, it's actually as successful, and in many cases more successful because it's individually driven, than wage employment is. And it is a much easier accommodation sometimes for folks with particular types of disabilities. Home-based business is one of those accommodations or business models that accommodate a variety of personality types and products and disability. For many years, we stayed away from small business development because we were afraid that we were going to isolate people. What we found, and I wish we'd have found it out much earlier because I think we lost 20 years in some cases, is that people are connected because, first of all, people have money in their pocket. When you have money in your pocket, that means that you have a certain amount of power in our society. But folks also have customers, and they're making those contacts. They have a supply chain that they're working through. And so we've found the exact opposite, that folks in home-based businesses, even though they might look isolated, are actually very much connected to their customer base, their suppliers, and their community. And again, they have the liberating forces of actually having some expendable income. I want to say that certainly many of you know that Voc Rehab for many, many years has supported small business, and that vocational rehabilitation around the country, many state agencies, and certainly the Rehabilitation Services Administration is very supportive of small business, but that many states are struggling under current rules and regulations and staff training issues around what constitutes a closure, because they're a results-based system. How much money is enough money to invest in a small business? How much should the consumer bring in? How do we measure the legitimacy of a business? How do we form new partnerships in the community with small business development centers or tribal business information centers? How does this work in urban versus rural issues? So there's a lot of issues that Voc Rehab is going to struggle with, and we're working with lots of VR offices and agencies around the country, and we're taking it as a case-by-case basis at this point. But we know that Voc Rehab closes nationally somewhere in excess of 5,000 small businesses a year as successful closures. There's no rule yet that really pinpoints what a successful closure is, but it's important for those of you out in the audience today to understand that it can be done and that an individualized approach, basically through the individual plan of employment, makes a whole lot of sense at this point as we start to figure out how that system works. Also, the Workforce Investment Act programs can and do support small business. We've just wrapped up a 3-year demonstration project using WIA funds through the Department of Labor in Montana and Wyoming. We worked through the Montana Job Training Partnership and a host of other partners like the Montana Job Training Partnership and Montana Community Development Corporation and Vocational Rehabilitation and many community rehab programs and centers for independent living. We were able in 3 years to help support about 80 small businesses and another 80 wage jobs through that money. Again, it was demonstration, and we're starting to figure out how is it that we're going to do more and more self-employment for folks who are going through the one-stop system. And certainly, Social Security work incentives are going to be critical to those of you understanding small business. And again, that's another, excuse me, that's another web-based class that will probably be going up in the near future through Virginia Commonwealth University. But the use of self-employment subsidy to protect benefits, the use of past plans to finance small business has been critical to us and to others around the country who are doing a lot of self-employment pieces. Property essential for self-support, which allows a business owner to go beyond that $2,000 resource limit under SSI, which really restricts people in being able to build equity in a business or in their own personal life. So Social Security has been tremendous just in their support through the past cadre and certainly through folks that we call a lot in Baltimore to talk to about these emerging issues in self-employment. So all of those systems are coming on board. I want to talk some now about into the actual physical network and development of a business plan. And again, I'll say that having a business plan does not guarantee success in a business by a long shot. In fact, it's been estimated that 75 to 80% of successful businesses in the United States do not have a business plan. However, we can probably pretty much predict that 100% of unsuccessful businesses didn't have a business plan either. And so we really do want to think about the future. That's especially critical when we're using somebody else's cash resource, such as vocational rehabilitation, or we're using a pass, to look at what are the impacts of self-employment income on the benefits, on Medicaid or Medicare. How does that impact Section 8 housing? All of those things, again, are beyond the scope of what we're going to do today. But having a business plan allows you to project what your possible earnings might be and then safeguard and work with these systems to create something that flows a little bit more precisely. We also need a business plan to think about the future in terms of how is our market liable to evolve. Is there a point at which we need to get out of the small business, and is there a time? Certainly lots of people who start small businesses start them to run for a very short period of time, sell out, take the capital, and start another business and keep building that way. Certainly if anybody owns rental property, you know that that's a common approach to building a portfolio of revenue-producing property. And it certainly is the same in small business. Lots of small businesses get sold, and they were started for that exact reason, was to start a small market, grow it a little bit, and then leverage that business to get a better business. We start, and again, if you go to the web and just do a search, you can find examples of business plans for all types of different businesses. Let me reinforce that Businesses are not started because there's a market need for them. That's the old economic development model. That's sort of related to the old job development model where we'd go out and find a job for somebody and then try to fit them into it. We really look at what's this person want to do? What's their dream? What are their gifts and talents? And can we indeed create a market? So we start by looking at the product or service that they're going to offer, and we try to refine that. And when you're writing a business plan, as you'll see, when you look at an executive summary on the web of somebody's business plan, you'll find that they can pretty much in a sentence or two define what their business is, who their customers are, and what it is precisely that they're going to do. So we're really trying to clear out the cobwebs and really sort to pinpoint what it is exactly that we're going to do. And we look at the environment in which we're going to be running this business, and that's a very broad and very diversely defined term. The environment can refer to the economic climate of the local area. It can refer to a global market. It could refer to the environment of the internet if you're going to do e-commerce. It can refer to a Main Street business or the local location that you're going to operate out of. So environment takes into account all different sort of aspects of the environmental issues. And again, the location is obviously closely tied to that. Are you doing it from a workstation inside your study at home? Are you running it from an espresso cart and you've got a particular location where you go in the morning and a different one at drive time at night? You know, all those things are critical, and they're tied back to that particular product or service. One of the things that just to be very clear on is that when starting a small business, don't try to be all things to all people. Really start to refine that idea. You probably don't want to sell hot dogs and birthday balloons. You probably want to focus in on one thing that you're going to do really well, and then diversify later if that needs to happen. As we move on, probably the single most question that we get asked is, how do we know that a business is going to work? And again, this is sort of looking at that potential and feasibility. We work with a number of small business development centers around the country, and one of my favorite people, Rosalie Cates, who runs the Montana Community Development Corporation, has a wonderful small business feasibility study, and what she basically tells people is, go sell one. Tell me how you did. Tell me who bought it, how much they paid, what they use it for. Selling one or two of your products, if that's feasible, tells you a whole lot about who the end user is. If you're selling it to somebody wholesale, then your marketing approach is going to be very different than if you're actually selling it to the end user. So we want to be thinking about, how do we test this? We've done a variety of different sort of feasibility studies. One of the things that I like to do is that after I've worked with somebody for a couple days, go back to my motel room or to my home, get out the phone book, and draw up 5 or 6 questions about that particular product or service, and call people randomly, sort of like a telemarketer would do, and say, you know, very simply, I would like to ask you a few questions about a business we're considering in your community. Do you have a few seconds to talk? I just want your opinion. If you don't have time, thank you very much. We won't bother you again. And you'd be surprised how many people want to talk to you about your business idea, because a lot of people have business ideas and they don't know how to go about getting them started. The other piece, obviously, is that there are a lot of generic services available in most decent-sized communities. Certainly the small business development centers, the Senior Corps of Retired Executives, tribal business information services, local economic development folks. Many chambers of commerce have small business groups that meet regularly. So again, developing the potential and feasibility, a lot of times it's not a major statistical undertaking. It is a word of mouth, opinionated, here's what we did once, sort of look at your community. A lot of small business is guesswork, and there's no way to engineer that out. You know, so talk to people who are experienced in small business and who understand variety of products and services. One of the next major places that we come to in the plan are the 3 C's. That is, we're defining our customers. Now, sometimes people will say, well, everybody's our customer. We want everybody to buy Jell-O on a stick. You can't start that way. You have to really refine what is our typical customer going to look like. Well, the buyer of Jell-O on a stick may not be a 3-year-old. It may be a 3-year-old's mother. And so that tells us right there who's making the buying decisions. There's lots of information about who makes buying decisions. There's lots of information in bookstores, especially in the business section, about sales and marketing and refining who your customers are. If you're going to sell pet food, you know that you need to target people who own pets. It's only logical that you do those sorts of things. But again, this may help you refine who your customer is. Maybe you don't have a distribution network where you could go out and actually sell pet food, but you could sell pet food to the stores that sell pet food. So again, you might be also selling to a manufacturer of pet food who does not have capacity to meet all of the requirements of their customers. So there's a variety of ways to look at how it is that you sell your product, and by defining who your end customer is. Then we look at our competitors. Who else is out there making this? And what are they not doing? We work with a gentleman who sells and installs custom windows in houses, and he grossed $750,000 this year in a small town in Montana. He did that by recognizing that he didn't need to compete with other glass installers and glass designers. What he needed to do was to show his customers that he had a better product. And so he could ignore, in a lot of ways, his competitors by just looking at what are his competitors not doing. Again, there's an opportunity to go in and work with competitors who maybe have more business that they can handle, and to form a partnership of some kind, whether that's a formal partnership or a loose partnership. But again, you need to look at, is there somebody else selling my exact service? Is there a way that I could do something value added? Ford certainly didn't close up when General Motors started selling cars. What they did was that they differentiated their product. They said, our product's better for these reasons. Our product, it comes in this variety of models. You can get it in this colors, whereas maybe you can't get a Chevrolet in that color. So there's a variety of different ways to deal with your competitors. Again, looking at some business plans is a great way of looking at how a variety of people develop their competitor analysis. And again, we're not talking reams and reams of paper. We've seen really good business plans that were 5 pages long. We've seen more complex ones that were 100 or 200 pages long. The typical one just isn't that big a document, and so it shouldn't scare you away. Those of you who write plans for achieving self-support to Social Security, you're already pretty much versed in the ability to put words on paper that make sense, that build a career, and it's basically the same process. A lot of what would go into a past plan would also go into a business plan. Then finally, we look at our capabilities. How much can we legitimately produce? Working with Lissa, a young lady in Montana who makes gourmet dog biscuits, her capacity was pretty limited because she wanted to grow her business only to the size of her residential kitchen. But the problem with that was that if you only grow your business so big and it's a competitive market, which certainly dog treats are, what happens is that somebody else comes in who isn't afraid to get bigger, and they take your market. So what Lissa has had to do, and luckily she makes enough money that she can do this, is that she's grown her business and now has 2 contract bakers working for her. Now that business only took about $3,000 to start, and she's now, like I said, has 2 contract bakers working for her. That's pretty impressive. Most of our businesses have only costs in the $4,000 or $5,000 range. So we're not talking about major businesses like Microsoft. We're talking about micro enterprises that employ 1 to 5 people. So the capabilities, certainly when Henry Ford started making Model Ts, he said, our capability is that you get 1 color because we can't offer 6 colors and be profitable. This is what capabilities mean. How far can I go with this product? How far can I ship it? How far can I advertise? And how many of these things can I make in a day or deliver in a day? And that is something that needs to be realistically portrayed. You can grow it later, and indeed we encourage people to grow their businesses, but not too fast. The marketing mix is basically where we start to look at where's that niche market that we were talking about. If we're going to do, say, a pooper scooper business for dogs, we're going to go only to neighborhoods where there's a high concentration of dogs and people who don't have kids whose job it is to clean up after the dog. And we can find that out through simple surveys, through canvassing, through just knowing people and interviewing them in a variety of neighborhoods. We can go and talk to city planners about where we might find those folks. The reason why the Dan Quayle Center and Museum is up is that that picture is up is that in Indiana, this is a specific niche in that community that people want to come and see this particular vice president's memoirs and the library and all those things associated with them. And this is truly a niche market. We want to look at price. You know, how much can people afford? Do we need 3 different versions of this? Do we need Levi's, or do we need some off-brand Kmart brand Levi's? Even if we make them out of the same shop, people want variety sometimes. Sometimes there's a low-cost buyer, sometimes there's a high-cost buyer. So we need to determine where is it that we can sell at what price. Distribution is one of our toughest pieces, especially for those of you in rural areas that you know getting the product out to a variety of people can be very tough. This is where we want to maybe hire a sales representative to go out and sell our product. This is where maybe we want to look at some form of internet sales. This is where a service like an auction house like eBay, which brings in 6 to 10 million buyers a day to look at products. This is another approach to distribution. This is getting a wholesale agreement with somebody, or it means selling chocolate chip cookies on Main Street. Now, if you've got a town of 300 people, you probably are going to exhaust your market really fast. So you want to be looking at diversification, and you want to be looking at how do I get my chocolate chip cookies to 6 other small towns in the area. Again, you're just thinking about how are we going to do it. In promotion, we're looking at how is it that we're going to market and advertise this product. Are we going to do word-of-mouth sales? Are we going to have an advertising budget? Are we going to advertise in print media, or are we going to go on the radio or the TV? We've had people buy radio ads in Montana or Wyoming for their businesses, which is generally a pretty big mistake because we don't have drive time. We don't have people stuck in cars where they are in range of the local radio station. When you go behind a mountain in Montana or Wyoming or Colorado or New Mexico, you've lost your market. So print advertising or word of mouth, networking, joining the local Chamber of Commerce or Kiwanis sometimes can be your best promotion. Doing public service announcements, getting press, anytime they're doing a press release, a variety of ways that you can promote a small business for low cost. And certainly we spend time on operations. How is the person going to actually produce and deliver the product? This is where a lot of people will need a variety of supports that are similar to supported employment. And the training techniques and the support techniques, assistive technology are all the same sorts of things. Lots of times it's a matter of having an internet connection or a digital camera to display your goods. It's the ability to own an automobile so that you can go out and sell your products. So again, operations takes those all into consideration. Having a good supplier chain so that you can get your products when you need them. If you're running a bagel stand and the local bakery every other day, their ovens break down and you've got no product to sell, is not a good situation to be in. So you need to cultivate good prices and good delivery with your suppliers. And again, you need to be thinking this through way before you open your business. It doesn't mean that you can't establish it as new relationships as you're going. Training. People need hands-on in producing a product efficiently sometimes. So we will teach people systematic instruction and their supporters systematic instruction. Finally, you need contingencies in case there's an accident and your product doesn't get to you or your raw supplies don't get to you. And that all gets folded into a production plan. How many of these can we produce on a given day, and how many do we need to? When do we need to tell people that we're done? And finally, the financial piece. How much cash do you have to put into this business? Is somebody else contributing cash? Again, we're not looking at major capitalization. What are the assets that you bring? Is this a place where we look for investors? Let's do a simple cash flow projection. Those are easy to do. You can find those on the web. What kind of work incentives can we use? Do we indeed want to borrow money? There are a number of low interest and unfortunately high interest loans for entrepreneurs. We do simple break-even analyses. At what point do profits exceed expenditures so that we know when we're starting to make a profit? And again, finally, how do we use our Social Security work incentives, such as property essential to self-support and plans for achieving self-support to help finance our businesses? And at that, I think our 30 minutes is about up. Terry?
Thank you, Terry.
Very fast.
Thanks. We hope that you enjoyed this webcast today, and we'd like for you to join us in our chat room. Just a note, we've added a discussion forum for you in case you are unable to post your question in the chat room. The discussion forum is linked off of the chat room webpage. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll meet you in the chat room.